By the time this video drops, we will already have a Nilou rerun ongoing, so as always, the big question is, should you get her? Now, of course, she's extremely niche by default and by definition, but she's very, very strong in that niche. And when you can actually play that niche in things like Spiral Abyss or, I guess, other combat events, she's a lot of fun. So, in my opinion, I definitely recommend getting her if you can afford her, because, of course, Natlan is about to drop in, I don't know, 3 minutes? I don't know. She's also getting a gorgeous new skin as well, or a new outfit. So that's also another reason to potentially consider getting Nilou if you don't already have her. Now, Nilou's last rerun was at 3.6, and oh boy, we've actually got quite a lot of new things available for her. So let's just get right into it. When her last rerun was in 3.6, immediately afterwards we saw the introduction of Kave. Now Kave is kind of not really a Nilou teammate. He kind of tries to do his own thing, which is to trigger blooms early, but considering that Nilou's passive already does that, it's kind of pointless. You can still use him as on-field Dendro DPS, I guess, for the purposes of setting up bloom triggers, so there's that. Baizhu is, on the other hand, a fantastic addition to Nilou's roster, where he is both a team healer and he can also be off-field Dendro application, especially at C2, where you don't even have to swap into him. But basically, if you use his ult, he has off-field Dendro application, so that's very, very nice. His weak-ass shield, which is both weak and ass for the most part, is actually a little bit stronger at tanking Dendro bloom seeds, so there's that. Meanwhile, Kirara, who came out in 3.7, leads more into the shield side as opposed to Baiju's healing side. So Kirara doesn't have any healing, but she does have a big fat shield that can also tank a lot of the Dendro Bloom hits. Now, on top of that, if you manage to get her to C4, which, by the way, she's going to be free in this patch, then you also get off-field Dendro application for Kirara. So that's also kind of nice. And then afterwards, nothing really happened until Fontaine dropped, where in 4.1, we of course had Neuvillette, and in 4.2, we of course have Farina. Now, both of these characters are absolutely perfectly fine options for your Hydro application in Nilou teams, but you are kind of severely wasting their talents if you decide to bring them into a Nilou team. Obviously, I'm talking specifically about Neuvillette's extreme damage and Farina's ult, which basically becomes meaningless in a Nilou team. And if you want to bring Farina into a Nilou team, well, you're going to need a healer. I suppose the one good thing about bringing Farina into a Nilou team, and I guess bringing off-field Ayato into a Farina team, is, or rather into a Nilou team, is that you can play Dignity Super Bloom. There's an idea. And then finally, okay, they've really got to put Nilou in the second half of a banner so that we get an opportunity to play with whoever is the new Dendro character in Nilou teams so that we can make a much more informed decision. But Emily is showing up in the second half of 4.8. She should be fine. First off, the main thing is that she's going to have a long ass time on her laps as off-field Dendro application, so that should be pretty good. But apparently it's slow Dendro application. Look, I don't know if it's too slow. As long as it's not slower than Baizhu, we should be good. Okay? Look, when Emily comes out, people are going to test her with Nilou, hopefully a lot more, and then we'll have a much better idea of whether or not Emily is considered good for Nilou teams or considered fine for Nilou teams. With regards to Nilou's nicheness, I do want to say though, despite the fact that her main gameplay is Super Bloom, where the team involves exclusively Hydro and Dendro characters, the thing is, it doesn't really matter which Hydro or Dendro characters you bring, i.e. you don't actually need to bring Nahida. There are Nilou teams that work perfectly fine without Nahida, is all I'm saying, okay? Nahida is obviously her best teammate, especially if you have C2 Nahida. She is very, very strong. But that's the case with Nahida in just about any Dendro team. She's very, very strong, right? Generally speaking, look, as long as your team isn't exclusively on-fielders and someone is running Deepwood, and preferably everyone, and more importantly, your Hydra characters are level 90, and someone is healing or shielding, you're pretty much good to go. So yeah, keep that in mind. Here's a list of all of the Hydro and Dendro characters that exist in the game before Natlan drops, in which case we'll get Kinichi and Mwalani as new teammate options as well. But as of recording, I have absolutely no idea what the kits even are. We don't even have real leaks of them yet, so I can't comment on them. But it is what it is. We're here with a baseline Nilou team. A team made up of 4 stars, one of which I actually forgot to build properly, and that one is Xingqiu. And as you can see, despite the fact that I actually didn't build my Xingqiu with EM at all, everything's dying pretty quickly. Of course, this isn't Spiral Abyss or Masanori or anything. This is just standard shenanigans with DMC, Yao Yao, who also, by the way, got a new staff called the Magical Girl Staff. It's not actually called the Magical Girl Staff. And, well, Xingqiu is a perfectly available in the shop, even 4-star Hydro off-fielder. So, yeah, there's that. And, you know, this works really well for a Nilou team. Even if I didn't build my characters properly, or rather, I didn't build Xingqiu properly. Because Nilou teams are just that bloody strong in AoE. So that's the deal. Of course, there is still my preferred, somewhat more expensive Nilou team that I've actually somewhat min-maxed.
I see everything. Make yourself a move.
Including my canvas that is actually built properly for the purposes of a Nilou team. Something like that. But yeah, we are in fact still able to do a lot of damage with these blooms. I don't know if you were able to see some of the very, very big green numbers that came out in that. I'm not confident enough yet to play Kirara myself, but I am starting to try and get used to her. Mainly because she's only shielding and no healing. I'm very, very used to having healing on my teams. But I might actually be able to play her a lot more when I get her to C4 if I manage to snipe one single Kirara Constellation. Alternatively, and especially if you have Constellations, you should be able to consider something like Vape Nilou as well. Now, at this point, she becomes another Hydro carry like Neuvillette, Ayato, and the like. But I've talked about her in this particular capacity in the past. Suffice to say, if you want to play Vape Nilou, her ult hits like a truck. So that's obviously going to be really, really nice. Now, let's have a look at Nilou's artifacts. Now, for super building purposes, she's still really, really straightforward to build. When Nilou's last rerun came about in 3.6, was also the introduction of a brand new artifact set called Vodukasha's Glow. Vodukasha's Glow being the second HP % artifact set, meaning that Nilou's best in slot artifact set is now 2-piece HP. That's it. Alternatively, you could try and get away with 4-piece Gilded or Paradise Lost, or maybe put that Paradise Lost set on your Hydro character, like Candace. Or, like I mentioned, if for some reason nobody has it already, Deepwood. That'll do. Keep in mind, all of these ideas are going to be available in the Artifact Strongbox when Natlan drops. Assuming they do what they've been doing already, which I think they will be, because it makes perfect sense. So yeah, it could also be a good idea to start farming, and then, I guess, farming squared with the Artifact Strongbox for Nilou, if that's something you want to do. With regards to her Artifact substats for super blooming purposes, it's triple HP, and then just try to get as much ER as you possibly can. 70k HP is pretty much the threshold you want to be going for. Keep in mind, your weapon of choice will also factor into this. If you're playing Vape Nilou, well, I won't claim to be an expert on Vape Nilou. All I'll say is there is a new Reverie set, which is a burning set. Could be good on Nilou. The 2-piece attack is obviously useless, but the 50% damage bonus from just having burning characters, burning enemies rather, kind of nice. The alternative that is potentially a little bit more difficult to play is Vodukasha's, where you do need to continue to take damage in order to get the 50% damage bonus, but that's an option, especially because the 2-piece does end up being more useful as well, because again, HP %. Okay, I guess for Vape Nilou purposes, the standard HP Hydro crit is probably the way to go. I'm not 100%. I don't know. Maybe Emblem is a thing too. Oh. Anyway, doesn't matter. Now, when it comes to Nilou's weapons, since our last rerun, there was nothing until 4.1 when we got the introduction of a weapon called the Dockhand's Assistant, which is a first 4-star HP percent sword. So if you have it, use it. Refinements are quite nice, but not really that necessary. Of course, our best slot is still the Key of Kashna's Suit, which apparently is also C6 Vape Farina's best in slot, so keep that in mind. Another weapon to keep in mind is the Sword of Narcissus. This is mainly for the Spiral Abysses where, let's say, 2 of the chambers seem like Nilou playgrounds, but then for some ungodly reason, they decide to chuck in Copelia or Copelius into one of the other chambers. Yeah, you can bring Sword of Narcissus on Nilou. You will end up suffering, depending on which other weapon you were using, a small to somewhat relevant Super Bloom DPS loss. But you can shut down Copelia and Copelius and also bypass, I think it's Copelius's shield phase as well. So that's kind of nice. And then you can just have a nice day. It's an option. And then otherwise, there's also J Cutter, which is obviously a very funny choice because it's also a big crit rate stat stick as well. So you could potentially use this in some sort of, like I used to, hybrid Super Bloom Nilou DPS build. It was a thing. It was totally an option that existed, okay? It could potentially be her best slot for vape teams as well, provided that's not key. Sacrificial Sword is also a good choice if you want to play double skill Nilou. Could be really good with Super Bloom teams as well, where you get to use the off-field ring and then also the on-field slashes. That could be really nice. Of course, I don't really bother with this myself because I'm in love with playing her with Candace, so there goes that idea. Otherwise, there's always the Sapwood Blade. It's just a really solid choice, and its passive is kinda like Key of Kashna Suit. Kinda. And then when it comes to Nilou's Constellations, I personally don't actively go for Nilou's Constellations. The only reason why I have C1 at all is because I was trying to snipe 2 Dories and ended up with Nahida and Nilou Constellations before that. But either way, now that we know what is on the Nilou and Navia banner, I definitely won't be sniping Nilou Constellations anytime soon. Or, I mean, I might try and snipe 1 Kirara. Doesn't matter. Anyway, I've talked about Nilou's Constellations in the past. Suffice to say, C1 is actually kind of nice for Super Bloom teams, actually, despite the fact that it's often labeled as a vape constellation. I actually quite like it because it kind of just means that my rotations are not with, like, I think you basically get 100% uptime on the ring, which is actually quite nice. C2 is the Super Bloom constellation. If you're min-maxing, you probably want to start with Nahida C2, but afterwards getting Nilou C2 is actually not a bad choice. C3 and C5 are fine for on-field vape Nilou. C4 for vape Nilou is probably a lot better than other characters' C4s. And then C6 is the obvious big dick vape Nilou constellation. Look, ultimately, for 99.8% of Nilou playing players, wow, I really scuffed that up, C0 Nilou is already really good. And then stopping at C2 makes perfect sense if you don't already have C2 Nahida. Well, if you already have C2 Nahida, then yeah, stopping at C2 Nilou also makes perfect sense. Yeah. Look, I don't think I really had a lot to talk about this time, although somehow I get this feeling this video is going to be as long as all my other Should You Get videos, so I guess I had a lot to yap about. Look, she's been out for so long that we kind of already know how she works. Hopefully this just jogs your memory so that you remember, oh yeah, we had a whole lot of these characters show up, and we also had a brand new weapon for Nilou, and she's still the amazing exploding character that she's always been. So yeah, but look, she's great. She's always been great. She will never, well, lately the Spiral Abyss has been very anti-Nilou because there's been a lot of boss rushing, which is usually where she struggles in. But even then, that's probably where you want to bring Neuvillette into your Nilou team to kind of just balance out the single target shenanigans. That's really an option right there. But look, she's still great. She's always great. So yeah, should you get her? Sure, if you can afford her. There we go. And then of course, when 5.0 drops, we'll see what happens for Nilou with Morlani and Kinich. When I know what the dealio is with Kinich and Morlani, I will give my first impressions of them in Nilou teams in a pinned comment. Hey guys, this is Kate, the editor. Alright, spoilers and leaks and all that jazz in 3, 2, 1. We've got Morlani, we've got Kinich. Let's get into it. We'll start off with Morlani. She's really straightforward. She's going to be a Hydro Mage, which basically means you can do on-field triggers with Morlani. If you play, for example, I don't know, Nilou, Baiju, Nahida, and Morlani, that should work pretty nicely, at least just using her normal attacks. As far as I can tell, she also has these shark bites as part of her skill when she's surfing on her shark surfboard. They might be able to apply Hydro as well, I'm assuming they do. And then her ult is just a single attack, so probably not super duper useful for Nilou teams, but I guess if you want another instance of Hydro application, there it is. As far as I can tell, her passives are meaningless, at least for Nilou teams, so not really anything to discuss there. And then we also have Kinich, who is going to be a Dendro Claymore. Obviously, that means his normal attacks are not going to be all that useful, but the big thing is that when he is grappling a target with his skill, he can fire these things called loop shots, and those should be also applying Dendro, and hopefully they have a standard ICD at the very least, so that should be quite nice. They seem pretty fast. When he has maxed out his point meter, and don't ask me anything about this point meter because I don't really understand it myself, he can apparently fire a different kind of shot instead. Does this count as a separate Dendro application? I don't know. We'll just have to see. Now, all of this seems to count as skill damage, which makes me wonder if this is not going to work with Xingqiu Yalan. I don't know. This might be a moment where you just bring Farina instead. I don't know. Now, here's the thing. His ult is Chroma's 4. Who's Chroma? The Warframe. It sticks around even when he is off-field, which means you actually have off-field Dendro application in the form of Kinich. It lasts for 15 seconds on an 18-second cooldown, so that is pretty damn good. And as far as I can tell, even his passives are somewhat meaningless for Nilou teams. How about that? All right, hope you guys enjoy this. Let me know what you think about all of this in the comments below. How do you feel about Nilou these days? Let me know in the comments. Do you believe she is the strongest AoE character in the game? The answer is possibly yes. I mean, Nouvellette could potentially give her a run for her money, but Nilou teams are still bloody strong in AoE. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed. If you like this video, hit that like button, subscribe for more Genshin Impact action, and until next time, I will see you guys later. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Good riddance.